Welcome to Equilter Quick Tips. I'm Dana and I manage customer service here at Equilter, and our segment this week we're calling Narrow Piecing on Point. The warm sun and temperatures bring us the promise of some wonderful sunflowers by the end of the summer, and so we're calling this week's quilt Sunflower Flourish. So in narrow piecing on point, we're going to be working with a quilt block that requires us to create a neat, even, but narrow border in two places on each block. We'll talk about some tricks for getting that done well. We are also going to be piecing strips that are centered onto the block rather than completely creating a block and then trimming it. So we'll give you some tips working with that to make that easy. Thirdly, we're going to eventually trim the block to be the size we need for it to be. And again, a few tricks for how to do that successfully so our block comes out square. So 3 techniques, let's get busy. I've got my first border onto the sunflower center, and I've cut carefully, I've stitched carefully. Even so, you can see that I'm not quite at 1/8 of an inch on all 4 sides. For that reason, we're going to go to the sewing machine and learn how to stitch the next piece on so that no matter the raw edge, my border will be straight and even. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how to be successful in creating straight, narrow border strips. We're all accustomed to aligning the raw edge of fabric against the right side of our presser foot. There are all manner of specialized presser foots that make our sewing easy, but sometimes it's just convenient to work with a single general purpose foot. In this case, rather than using the raw edge of the fabric and the right side of the presser foot, I'm going to be using the left side of the presser foot and taking advantage of my ability to change the needle position. So as we see, we've got 3/8 of an inch that we want to maintain equal distant all the way through this stitching process. So we're going to position the needle 3/8 of an inch from the left side of the presser foot so that I can maintain that 3/8 of an inch. So if we put the tape measure here and can see our starting point here, with most machines we have the ability to move that needle over so we're at 3/8 of an inch from the left side of our presser foot. And now we'll stitch a seam. So I have aligned the light tonal strip that we're going to add to our block. It's on the underside, as you can see, so that I can see where my seam line actually is. It's great when we do an accurate cutting. It's great when we do accurate sewing, but it's tough in narrow strips like this to be absolutely on every time, every inch. So this is a technique that lets us stay parallel to this seam we have already sewn. And you'll notice as I'm sewing, I'm keeping the left side of the presser foot on that seam line, and you can see my needles way over here, maintaining 3/8 of an inch because we changed that needle position. Okay. Can you see how nice and even and straight that border piece is? And again, that comes from following my seam line instead of trusting my raw edge. Great technique. Then we are ready to do our center and stitch. To create the center point, I'm going to fold my block in half and bring this strip together, and then simply finger press a crease in the receiving strip and in the strip I'll be sewing to it. Now I'll be putting right sides together, so I like to fold right sides together on the receiving strip and wrong sides together on the strip that will be received, so that those folds fit into each other nicely. So I've matched those finger pressed folds, and off we go. You'll see my strip doesn't go the whole distance of the strip to which I'm sewing it, and that's perfectly fine. That's the beauty of this technique. So let's go ahead. I have changed my foot back to 1/4 inch, and I am now working on the right side of the foot. And we're going to stitch this through. And we've got our strip ready to go and centered. Now we'll follow the same technique in terms of using the right side and changing our needle position to get our triangle. So we've attached our gold strip, and it's now time to put on our final triangle. We're going to use the same 2 techniques. I've finger pressed a crease in the triangle so that I can align it with the center point on my gold strip. I have repositioned my needle so that again I can use the left side of the presser foot. The difference now, so I can see this seam, I'm going to flip my block over, and as you see, I haven't pressed open my seam allowances as yet, and that's just fine. I can take it all to the ironing board when it's all finished and do my pressing all at once. Saves energy, saves a walk to the ironing board with each seam. That's one reason I like this center and stitch technique. I can work on one side of the block all the way through. So we are ready to stitch, and again I'm using the left side of the presser foot and guiding from my seam line rather than my raw edge. In a perfect world, they would come out the same. There again, we've got our perfect straight border and our triangle attached, and now we're ready to go to the ironing board and press our seams open. So when we center and stitch, as I indicated, we can sew all these seams on a single corner at one time. Then we come to the ironing board and it's time to press, and we want to press these seams open. I find it easiest to start with the outermost seam. So we'll start there, open up, and get it pressed. And then we'll move to the next seam. And another thing I like about the center and stitch technique is it's easy to grab this piece and get my seam started open and then continue on down. And I do go ahead and press that seam allowance accordingly. Again, here I can grab the brown border because it sticks out beyond the cream. And watching so I don't burn my fingers, I get this seam allowance pressed open as well. Now certainly you can press each seam as you go, but this saves me trips. I get it all done at once. So we've got all our borders and our strips and our final triangle onto our block. Now it's time to trim. And we're going to trim in such a way that the corner of the sunflower fabric will be our point that matches the next block. By using a square ruler as opposed to a narrow straight ruler, I can make sure that I'm cutting square all the way around the block. So with the ruler aligned, I'm ready to neaten this up and cut through and neaten up that edge. Then we'll do the same to the other 3 sides as well. Okay, so now we're ready to put our sunflower flourish together. We've talked about 3 techniques here on narrow piecing on point. We've talked about creating straight, even, narrow borders. We've talked about center stitching. And we've talked about using the right kind of ruler to square up our blocks so that we end up with accurate blocks to put together in the quilt. These are techniques that will be useful on any quilt, even though we've used sunflower flourish today as our example. We hope you've enjoyed narrow piecing on point and look forward to seeing you next time on Equilter Quick Tips.